Hey, what's up? So I heard this statement where a messy room or a messy house equals a messy mind. And the first time you hear it, it almost sounds accurate, and you start to think, if your house or room is messy, you start to think, oh yeah, maybe my mind is messy. But then what is a messy mind? So the statement, messy room or messy house equals messy mind, no, I don't think that's true. I think sometimes it can be true, but definitely not always. For example, if you're incredibly busy, if you've got a lot on your mind, if you've got a lot on your plate, if you're in pain, if you're in survival mode, then you might not have the capacity in that period of your life to be picking up after yourself. But I think that's a big difference between someone who is perpetually messy or a hoarder. And if you're not perpetually messy or a hoarder, then you probably know what clean or organized looks like. And perhaps what's perceived as messy to the untrained eye is actually just organized chaos. You know, some people have good spatial memory. Here's another example. If you imagine a hill, the bottom of a hill, and another hill, and if you imagine a ball at the top of the hill and it rolls down the hill and then kind of sways a little bit, swings around, and then it finds its equilibrium, which is at the bottom of the hill. Now, if you imagine that process is similar to a person's process when it comes to cleaning their clothes, they would probably put their dirty clothes in a laundry basket. Once the laundry basket gets full, they will put those dirty clothes in a washing machine. They'll wash the clothes, take the clothes out of the washing machine, or if it's a dryer, they'll use a dryer as well, or they'll hang it on a washing line. Once it's dry, it'll come back in probably in a pile. From that pile of clean clothes, you could fold the clothes, put them in drawers, or put the clothes on coat hangers and put them in wardrobes. Now, once it's there, obviously the next time that you need to pick an outfit or pick some clothes to wear, then you would go to those drawers or your wardrobe, and then you'd pick your outfit. However, if you just left the clothes in a pile and you didn't fold them and put them in drawers, or you didn't put them on coat hangers and put them in a wardrobe, you could essentially skip 2 steps or remove 2 steps from the cycle, which is folding and then putting them back into a drawer or a wardrobe. Now, what's the cost of this? The cost of this is obviously your clothes stay in a pile. Maybe you don't want them getting crinkles in certain ways, and so folding them might help. But for the most part, you start to weigh out, maybe it does make sense to just leave them in a pile if that's where they're just going to ultimately end up anyways. And then again, some people might say, oh, but if it's in a pile, it might be hard to pick out what you want when you want it. But if you've only got a few items in that set of washing, then it's not a whole lot of clothes to pick from anyways. So you really do start to weigh out aesthetics versus functionality. Of course, folding things and then reducing size and all that stuff may help with aesthetics and may help with organization, but it directly challenges functionality in some ways, or practicality, or optimization, shall we say. And so what might look messy to some is actually functional to others. And in fact, not all aesthetic things are functional. And you can see examples of this in real life, where being visually pleasant, I think, can help. But if the functionality isn't behind it, then it's limited by its weakest point. Then there's things like order comes from mess, or you can't have the order without the mess. And it's hard to say where creativity comes from. Sometimes asymmetric things can be artistic, and then sometimes there's beauty in symmetry. One thing that did come to mind is if your house is messy, but your house or apartment is small, then it could be the feng shui of the house, or maybe the right drawers or containers aren't available, or the space just isn't big enough to allocate things in their more organized places. The analogy that comes to mind is like putting a Formula One car engine in a go-kart. It would just destroy the go-kart because it would overpower it. Anyways, that's my take on whether or not I think a messy room or house reflects a messy mind. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.